I wake up every morning just crying, thinking this is not going to be what's going to happen every single day. It's just so hard to get through it. I just don't know how to get through it.
Tell me about his childhood. Did he play sports? Was he in scouts? What kinds of things did
Yes,
did
he
do?
played sports. He played sports from the time he was 5 years old up until he was 17. And he was in basketball, he was in baseball, he was in football, and loved NASCAR. He and his dad went to the NASCAR races all the time. Loved sports, loved sports. And he was a good kid. Had two best friends, and that's who he grew up with, and still are friends with them today. And there's nothing that would have predicted any of this could have ever happened.
Yeah.
Nothing in his childhood at all. I would have never in a million years thought something like this could happen to him at all.
You didn't see things like him getting into fights? Or...
No fighting. He was quiet, and he got along with people, and he didn't start anything, and he was a perfect teenager, tell you the truth. He did not even rebel. He wanted to go to NASCAR Tech. We made that possible for him.
What did he do after he finished school?
He worked at the dealership as a service technician and was making good money and loved it. He bought a toolbox, and he started buying his tools, and enjoyed it. He was doing well.
When and where did he meet Shanann?
They met, and he liked her, she liked him, but it didn't, I don't think that was love at first sight or anything. They took a little while and I guess got to know each other and, dated. It was always a little strange that she always said a lot of things about Chris in front of me that I didn't like. Like, this isn't the kind of person I would date. He doesn't know how to do this, or he doesn't know how to do that. He looks like a skater boy. Look at his...
It's early morning in Frederick, Colorado. The sun is barely rising, washing the quiet suburb in pale gold. Sprinklers tick over manicured lawns, children's bikes rest on driveways, everything looks ordinary. But on Saratoga Trail, something feels off. A friend is pounding on the front door of number 2825. No answer. No sound. Inside, the lights are off, the house still. Shanann Watts, 34, pregnant, mother of two, hasn't returned calls or texts. She'd missed a doctor's appointment, and for her, that was unthinkable. The friend dials 911. Within minutes, police arrive. They knock, call out, circle the house. Through the windows, everything looks normal, no signs of a struggle. Shanann's car is still in the garage. Her purse and phone are inside. Her children's blankets are neatly folded on the couch. But Shanann, Bella, and Celeste are gone. Moments later, a truck pulls into the driveway. Out steps a tall man in a gray shirt, calm, collected. Chris Watts. Husband. Father. He greets the officers, arms crossed, trying to appear cooperative. But something about him feels off. Bodycam footage would later capture his composure, his stillness as officers search the house, his faint smile when he mentions his wife might have gone somewhere. Behind him, the camera lingers on a child's backpack, an empty crib, and the unbearable silence of a family that no longer exists. That silence will soon echo across the nation. By nightfall, news spreads that a pregnant woman and her 2 young daughters have vanished. Neighbors search, friends pray, and cameras gather outside the Watts home. On live TV, Chris pleads for their return, hands folded, eyes blank.
What's going on right now around your house?
Right now it's you got K9 units, the sheriff's department. Everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent, see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now it's just like they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
What happened? Your wife came home. Tell me what's.
She came home from the airport 2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here, and like about 12:10 in that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say but she never got back to me. But she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well, and that's what really concerned a lot of people. Is like if she's not getting back to her, like if she doesn't get back to me, that's fine. Like she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's when I came home. And then walked in the house and nothing was vanished. Nothing was here.
But far away, in North Carolina, a mother is watching that same broadcast, frozen, trembling, unable to breathe. Cindy Watts stares at her son on the screen. To her, this is still the shy, gentle boy who once built model cars on the kitchen floor. The boy who never raised his voice, who never hurt anyone. Now, he's the face of a nightmare. In the days ahead, Cindy's life will unravel alongside the world's disbelief. Because when the truth finally comes out, when her son confesses to killing his pregnant wife and 2 little girls, Cindy Watts will be left holding a pain few could imagine, the agony of loving the killer as much as she mourns the victims. This is not just the story of a crime. It's the story of a mother, trapped between the memory of who her son was and the monster he became. And it begins in silence. Before it was a headline, before it was a crime scene, the Watts family looked like a dream. On social media, Shanann Watts shared her life with the world, smiling selfies, dance videos with her daughters, motivational quotes, and endless gratitude for her husband, Chris. "He's my rock," she wrote once. "He's the best thing that ever happened to me."
Yes, your popcorn. Do you want a brother or a sister?
Sister.
You want a little sister?
Yeah.
You want to be a big sister?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Go, Cece. Go, Bella. Careful, Cece. You're gonna get dizzy. You're gonna get dizzy, Cece. You're gonna get dizzy.
To thousands of people online, they were the definition of happiness, a young couple, 2 adorable little girls, and another baby on the way. A picture of stability in a polished Colorado suburb. But the truth, as it often is, was hiding behind the filters. Shanann, born in North Carolina, was strong-willed, passionate, and relentless. She'd overcome health issues, built a career from home, and carried herself with energy that could fill a room. Everything she did, from parenting to her business, was full throttle. Chris, in contrast, was quiet. Soft-spoken. The kind of man who stayed in the background. He worked long hours as an oil field operator, kept to himself, rarely argued. To friends, they were opposites that balanced each other. But in private, that balance was starting to crumble. Money was tight. Their mortgage was high. And behind Shanann's online optimism, there were moments of exhaustion, long messages to friends about Chris being distant, withdrawn, cold. By the summer of 2018, she was pregnant with their third child, a boy they planned to name Nico. But instead of excitement, there was tension. During a trip to North Carolina that July, Shanann told friends something felt wrong, that Chris barely spoke to her, that he seemed like a stranger. What she didn't know was that back in Colorado, Chris was living a double life. He'd started an affair with a coworker, secret dinners, phone calls, a fantasy of freedom from the life he'd built. He told his mistress he was separated, that the marriage was over. But at home, he was still smiling for photos. To Shanann, his silence was confusing. To Chris, it was calculated. He was already imagining a future without her, a future without any of them. And back in North Carolina, Cindy Watts, his mother, had no idea what her son was becoming. She and Shanann had clashed in the past, their relationship strained by pride and misunderstanding. But to Cindy, her son was still a good man caught in a complicated marriage. When she looked at Chris, she didn't see anger or cruelty. She saw the same quiet boy she'd raised. She couldn't see the storm gathering inside him. In just a few weeks, that quiet suburban home would transform from the image of perfection to a house of unimaginable horror. And Cindy Watts would be left with a truth that no mother can prepare for. That sometimes, the person you love most can become the one you fear the most. Every tragedy begins with quiet warning signs, whispers that no one hears until it's too late. For Shanann Watts, those whispers began the moment her husband stopped looking at her the same way. At first, she brushed it off. He was tired. Overworked. Distracted. But something deeper was changing, something she couldn't name. Chris was losing weight, dressing differently, spending more time at the gym. He wasn't talking, wasn't smiling, and when Shanann tried to reach for him, he'd flinch as if affection burned. She asked him again and again what was wrong. He said, nothing. But silence can say more than words ever could. While Shanann tried to repair their marriage, Chris was drifting further away. He'd fallen into an affair, a secret relationship with a coworker named Nicole Kessinger. To her, he was a man ready to start fresh, a husband trapped in an unhappy home. To Chris, she was escape, the doorway to a new life, one without the weight of responsibility. The texts between him and Nicole grew more frequent, more intimate. He started talking about the future, vacations, apartments, a life free of lies. And all the while, Shanann was writing him long messages that went unanswered. I don't know who you are anymore, she told him. He replied only once, I'll fix it. But he never did. In the final weeks of her life, Shanann began to sense something sinister behind his detachment. Her friends noticed the shift, her anxiety, the exhaustion in her voice. She even told one of them, if anything happens to me, look at Chris. It was a line said half-jokingly, but it would echo later with unbearable weight. The night air in Frederick, Colorado, was still, the kind of stillness that feels wrong, like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the Watts home, Shanann returned from her late business trip. It was after 1 a.m. when her friend dropped her off, headlights fading into the darkness. The cameras on the neighbor's porch caught the last known image of Shanann Watts, walking up to her front door, suitcase in hand, unaware she was stepping into her own death. What happened next will never be fully known. Only 2 people were in that house who could tell the truth, and one of them never walked out. Chris would later claim there was an argument. That Shanann accused him of cheating, that she threatened to leave. But the truth he eventually confessed was darker than words could ever justify. In the early hours of that morning, he strangled his pregnant wife in their bed, ending not just her life, but the life of their unborn son, Nico. Moments later, their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, woke up. Tiny voices calling for their mother, voices that would never be heard again. Chris told them everything was fine. He wrapped Shanann's body in a sheet, loaded it into his truck, and drove them, his daughters alive in the back seat, toward the oil field where he worked. The drive was 45 minutes. Long enough for guilt to grow. Long enough for horror to bloom. But guilt never came. At that remote site, miles from town, he ended their lives, his own children, and placed their bodies inside oil tanks, hiding Shanann in a shallow grave nearby. He then drove home, showered, and went to work like nothing had happened. When Shanann's friend called later that morning, he answered calmly. He said she'd taken the kids to a friend's house. He even texted her phone, messages he knew would never be read, to make the lie look real. That afternoon, as police arrived for a welfare check, Chris stood in his driveway, speaking softly, helping officers search the very house where he had destroyed his family. When neighbors played back security footage showing his truck backing into the garage in the middle of the night, his composure cracked, just slightly. But enough. It was the beginning of his unraveling. By the next day, detectives noticed inconsistencies. His story didn't match the evidence. The calm husband now looked like a man trapped by his own lies. And when the truth finally came out, the world stopped. Chris Watts hadn't lost his family. He had taken them, piece by piece, and buried them under the same sky that once watched them laugh. For Cindy Watts, hearing those details shattered something inside her that would never be repaired. Her son, her quiet, sweet Christopher, had become a killer. And she had no idea why. But for Cindy Watts, the horror was beyond words. When detectives called her in North Carolina, she refused to believe it. She thought it was a mistake, that her son was being framed, pressured, misunderstood. She couldn't accept that the same boy she'd tucked into bed, the boy who never fought, never yelled, had done something like this. She told herself there had to be more to the story, that maybe he'd snapped, maybe he'd been provoked, maybe something had gone terribly wrong. In her mind, she clung to the version of Chris she'd always known, the shy, gentle boy who couldn't hurt anyone. But that boy was gone. What remained was a man who'd murdered his wife and children, buried them like secrets, and gone to work the next day as if nothing had happened. And yet, even as the evidence poured in, Cindy couldn't stop loving him. That's the cruelest part of being a parent to a monster, the love doesn't disappear. It lingers, poisoned and painful. The investigation was over. The facts were clear. The motive, however, was not. Why? Why would a man with no history of violence destroy his entire family? Detectives said it was selfishness, the desire for a new life. Others said it was rage, control, a moment of madness. But for Cindy Watts, none of those words made sense. She wasn't searching for why. She was searching for how. How her son, her flesh and blood, could look at his children, hear them cry, and still go through with it. That question would follow her into every interview, every sleepless night, every headline that painted her family in horror. The cover-up was gone. The investigation complete. And the story of Chris Watts, husband, father, murderer, had become a wound that would never heal. For Cindy Watts, it wasn't just the loss of her grandchildren or her daughter-in-law. It was the death of her son in another way, not his body, but his soul. And as the trial approached, the world would soon see her for the first time, sitting in a courtroom, trembling, trying to find words in a story that had already taken everything.
And if I can have you folks introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Cindy Watts.
Ron Watts.
Thank you. And I have authorized you to make a statement to the court as paternal grandparents of the children. And if you choose not to make a statement, but your designee, Ms. Powers, chooses to, she can do so as well. How would you like to proceed today?
Can I read that? Yeah, do you want me to start? I want you to start, but I would like to read
Who's going to be speaking today?
Your Honor, initially, they've asked me, and they're hoping that they have the strength to speak, but if they do not, they've written out their statements and asked me to finish for them. So
That would be fine. Who would like to go first?
if I could start, Your Honor. On behalf of the Watts, Your Honor, and to the community, We thank you for the opportunity and the recognition under the Victim Bill of Rights. We come today as the grandparents and the parent of the daughter and children whose life was taken in this case. We are not here to ask for leniency. We are not in any way condoning or tolerating the crime that has occurred and the pain that has been caused. We join in our daughter-in-law and grandchildren's family in saying this should never have happened. This is not condonable. This is something that we will never get over. We appreciate the consideration that everyone has paid, most especially the families that have lost everyone. We appreciate that they begged for Christopher's life. We agree and echo what they have said, that it is not his place to take anyone's life, nor would it be our place as a community to take his life. So we thank you for the opportunity and for every consideration and effort that's been put out. The prosecution in this case has in fact respected the Victim Bill of Rights. They took the time to explain that the information that my clients had at the time that they were interviewed was not correct. They were misinformed. They were searching for answers. They were not intending to cause any pain to anyone, and they appreciate that the prosecution answered their questions and gave them the time and the respect and the consideration so that they could tell this court and everyone in this community that the interview content was not their message, that they accept that their son has done this, that they accept that he chose to plead guilty, that he sought and requested their consent and agreement for a life sentence. They appreciate that he is given the opportunity to serve that life sentence. It is his responsibility, it is his sentence, and it is not enough to make up for what has done. We understand and we join the family in that we have questions. We don't know how such a thing could possibly happen, or that a man that was responsible for raising his children and protecting his wife would take the steps that he did, and that he would disregard their bodies and the love that he had for them and they had for him and everyone else, and take the gestures and put this community through the investigation and the discovery and the responsibility of bringing justice. We do not understand that. We do not think it was appropriate. We cannot begin to think that an explanation will ever justify it. My clients indicate that they understand that a full opportunity for a confession with all of the responsibility and accountability has not occurred. And they support the family and the request that that happen, if not today, at an appropriate time, in an appropriate manner, so that everyone can have peace, to understand to the best of their ability the details that they need and to have their questions answered. And by giving this opportunity of a life sentence, we hope that he embraces that moment. That had the death penalty been pursued, there would not have been an opportunity to be accountable and to give a full confession. And had the death penalty been sought, counsel would have fought for his life, the prosecutors would have been engaged in a multiple-year battle, the families would have been torn apart, this community would have had to subsidize it and endure it, and we have so much respect and gratefulness that that did not happen. We would strongly encourage Christopher Watts to give that full confession in the tone and in the timing that he thinks is appropriate with the guidance of his counsel. We feel that it would be appropriate and helpful to ease the pain and the suffering. But we also say we don't think that there's anything that he can say that will ever account for his behavior. There's nothing that can be done to cure the harm he has caused.